And welcome back to Richo. I should say, to get the preposition right. In our Canberra studio is Scott Morrison, the man who's stopped the boats and is now going to stop who knows what. We'll find out. G'day, Scott. How are you?
G'day, Graham. Good to see you back on board, and mate, all the best for your health this year and everything else.
Thank you very much. It's, there are some dramas there, but we'll get there. I'm impossible to kill, you know that. Now, you've got a job that I had, right? And I think when I had it, which is 1990, so it's because you're a much younger man, 1990, I was Minister for Social Security. I think I had about 40 billion, which I think at the time was more than a quarter of the budget. Where is it now? How much does your department spend?
150 billion roughly, which is over a third of the budget, and that's growing, and it continues to grow in right across the board in all areas. And one of the new areas that have been brought into the portfolio, which I suspect wasn't part of it last time when you were there, is the whole childcare issue as well, and that's been brought in. That was previously in education until now. So,
yes,
and that is of course one of the big issues. That is one. Yeah, and that is one of the big issues that is confronting families, and issues of labour force participation and getting people into work whenever and wherever you can. So this whole issue of participation is one that's going to dominate my thinking. Obviously, economic participation for those who are currently on benefits or those who we want to get back into the workforce, but also social participation. You don't want people isolated, disconnected, socially out there, because that only contributes to many of the other problems they have, and we want to address that as well.
Well, you've got a lot to address. Now, you stopped the boats. You're regarded as the government's tough guy. I mean, you wouldn't describe yourself as that, because I know you're a very gentle soul. But what are you going to be tough about?
A pussycat, mate.
You haven't been put in there to be a pussycat. I mean, you're in there to do some hard things. You wouldn't have been put there otherwise. I mean, all the predictions were you were going to defence. I wouldn't have put you in defence if I was the boss. I think he's been sensible doing this. And I think, you know, this or health or something like that would have been where I'd have shoved you, because you've got to go where there are jobs to be done and a message to be sold. Now, who are you going to crack down on? Because a bloke like you is not going to sit there and do nothing. Now, does that mean that anyone on the dole has got to look out?
Well, anyone who's trying to rip it off does. Anyone who's trying to rip off the welfare system, because every welfare benefit paid, every benefit paid is paid for by another taxpayer. On average, an Australian who works is working a whole month to pay for someone else's benefits. Now, there are a broad range of people who need and deserve our support, whether it's those on the age pension who've worked hard all their life and they had a clear deal as they went through life. If they worked hard, there'd be an age pension at the other end. Now, I think retirement incomes have changed a lot since then for people like me when I come to retire and my generation. But that said, all the way through to those who are, have real disabilities, those who are looking after people as carers. And I think Australians generally are quite happy to have a system that helps people who are genuinely in need and deserve our support. But what they won't cop, just like they won't cop people coming on boats, is they're not going to cop people who are going to rort that system. So there does need to be a strong welfare cop on the beat, and I'll certainly be looking to do that. But I'll be doing it because I want to make sure this system helps the people who most need it.
Well, one of the things that you'll have to address, and it wouldn't have mattered who got the job, it's got to be addressed eventually. In the out years of the budget, not tomorrow afternoon, but in the out years, you've got the new disability insurance scheme. Now, that was a massive cost to the budget, with Labor just sort of dropped on you at the last minute, and that you've got to deal with. Now, what are you going to do about that? Because see, there are two problems here. One, very worthy scheme, and one that I thought its time had come, because I think the disabled and their carers in particular have never been treated properly by any government. I'm not making a political statement about Liberal or Labor. Wouldn't matter if it was John Howard or Bob Hawke. We have never done the right thing. And yet we choose to introduce such a scheme at a time when money is, to say the least, scarce. What are you going to do about that?
Well, I think they're all points well made. I mean, I can't recall an initiative that in the welfare space which has had such strong support in the community. And to be true, it is actually an insurance scheme, not a welfare scheme, but putting that technicality to one side. At full operations, the levy is only going to cover around about 40% of what this is going to cost. There is still billions that need to be found to make sure that this program actually runs. And I see achieving the NDIS as one of the worthy goals of going through the hard tasks of reforming the welfare welfare system to ensure that we can accommodate this, because this is the sort of thing that in social services that you want to be able to deliver. Now, we supported it in opposition. I think there's very strong bipartisan support for it that continues, and we want to manage that and protect that. But to deliver it, you've got to do more than announce it. And that's the task that has fallen to our government and to Mitch Fifield in particular, who's been doing a great job, and I'll be supporting him as my junior minister. But you've got to find the savings, you've got to find the reforms that ensures that you can accommodate a program that is going to cost more than around about $12 billion at the Commonwealth level alone to ensure that it can run. And I think that's a worthy goal, and that's why it's worth getting the reforms right so we can achieve it.
Well, one of the things that's been pretty obvious, I mean, we always hear stories about dole bludgers, and I often reject them because when I was minister, and it'll be the same for you, you meet people who are trying very hard to get a job, and it's not easy.
True.
The economy's not, I mean, you might argue the economy's not in terrific shape. Next couple of years don't look fabulous, so it's hard out there to get a job. But by the same token, I look at Brothers for Life and a whole range of ne'er-do-wells, people fighting in Syria, and I look at them and they're on benefits. I mean, how does that work? They look pretty healthy to me when they're hefting a gun up to go and shoot and kill someone.
Yeah, look, very good point. And one of the pieces of good news is the reforms we've been introducing are starting to reduce the flow of people into the disability support pension, because we've been cracking down on the eligibility for getting onto it, but you've still got to manage the stock of people that are there. We're also increasing the medical tests for those under the age of 35, and so there are some reforms there, and people can expect more to ensure that the disability support pension in particular is there to support people with genuine disabilities. We also want to help people get off the disability support pension where they can work more, and I know people who have disabilities want to do that because there is not only the economic benefit of work both to those families and to the economy, but there is also the social benefits that come with that as well. But to get people off welfare and into work, you've also got to do the most important thing of all, and that is to grow the economy. There's got to be jobs, and that's why our government is so focused on growing the economy as our first priority. Well,
don't worry, we'll get to that. I don't think you're doing quite brilliantly on that. You're going well so far, mate. You just got the first question, mate. But I just want to take you back just 1 second to what you were saying.
Sure.
I remember well, my time as minister over 20 years ago, nearly a quarter of a century, but the memory goes back to general things. You don't remember specifics, but you can remember general things. Now, I mean, everyone tells you you've got to tighten up on the disability pension. I think, Social Security Minister for decades has been told that. But when I look at these people we just talked about, the Brothers for Life ones that I've seen, or some of these maniacs that are fighting in Syria or in Iraq, are we having a look at the doctors who signed the form that said these people were in some way disabled?
Well, I don't want to breach any sort of privacy or confidences about specific matters that might be under review, Graham.
I'm asking, is there an examination into how those people actually ever got on that benefit?
Well, all I can say is I think people can be very confident about the thoroughness of investigations that would take place in reference to particular individuals. But what I can also say this, it is now government policy, and this was introduced by our government, that you have to go to a government doctor, a government-approved doctor, to get the DSP. You can't go off to some mate or something like that. You have to go to a government-approved doctor to get onto the DSP now. And I think that's been a very important reform. We've also had other reforms which have said you can't go away for half the year, sit on the beach in Bali or overseas and claim the DSP or the pension for that matter, for all of that period of time. It's important that there are integrity measures to protect the system for one simple reason, so the people who deserve it get it, and that we can make the system sustainable.
Well, I really wish you well with that. It was always a problem for me. I always worried about it, but there aren't, as you know, in government, once you get there, not every problem is easy to solve. Now, having covered that, I want to take you more into general politics, because I always like to do that with you, because you're, as I said, you're the tough guy of the place. You also know which way's up. I think you know the electorate pretty well. I don't think you live in in some on-high castle. I think you've been pretty good at what you do. Now, are you on this Economic Review Committee, the small subcommittee of Cabinet? You're more than a third of the budget. Are you on it?
Yeah, no, I've joined the ERC, that's right, the Expenditure Review Committee. I was previously on the National Security Committee in my previous portfolio, and obviously Peter Dutton's taken that on. He's done a great job, particularly over this last week or so, dealing with the issues on Manus, but I've taken his place on the ERC and he's taken mine on the NSC.
Well, I was on the ERC for a year or two, and I remember asking to get off. Because it takes up an enormous amount of time, and if you're a busy minister, it's an enormous addition. And yet, I guess when a third of the budget is yours, you have to be there. Now, what about the leaks from it? Now, I can recall leaks from our cabinet back in the Hawke Keating days, but not from the Expenditure Review Committee. That's a new thing. You must be pretty disturbed by that.
Well, look, I've only seen, the press reports about this, Graham, and it's important that the government remain focused on the job within the ERC, and that's to get the budget under control and make sure we've got an economic program that grows the economy. And look, that's what I'm focused on. I believe that's what the team is focused on, and we'll be meeting again soon, and we'll just get on with the job of preparing the next budget. I mean, we've got matters outstanding from the last budget that are held up in the Senate. That's frustrating. We're going to have to take a good look at quite a number of those measures, both in the context of what's currently before the Senate as well as what we seek to recast for the budget that's coming forward, particularly in my own area of responsibility. A big area there is going to be childcare.
Look, I've got to go. They're giving me wind-up signals, but I mean, look, you and Julie Bishop have been the standout successors of a government that hasn't gone all that well in its first 15 months, 16 months. Whether you want to admit that or not, everybody knows it. I won't ask you to concede that, but that's a fact. Now, how could there have been such a cock-up over Medicare, whether it's co-payments or $20 with doctors? How could it have gotten to such a ridiculous stage over so many months? Why couldn't someone have sorted this out so much earlier?
Well, Graham, I think it'd be a mistake to think that these types of reforms are simple and easy. I mean, they're difficult reforms. They are very difficult.
Say that, mate,
Not
but this is a cock-up of massive proportion.
But the problem with hard things, Graham, is they're quite hard. And I think to work through these issues with the sort of determination the government has is important, and we're going to continue to pursue things that we believe will make Medicare sustainable. Now, I will concede, as the Prime Minister has and others, this has been difficult, and on occasion it has been ragged, but the goal of the sustainability of Medicare matters. And now, at least we've got a plan and are trying to pursue a plan. I've got no idea what Bill Shorten's plan, and I'll tell you what I'd say for this year is, if you want to be part of the national debate, come up with a proposal. If you just want to have a whinge from the opposition, then you're not paying the price for a credible debate. We'll be in it. The question is, will Labor?
Mate, you're always good at putting a weak case. It's what I used to do at ALP conferences. You do it very well. Congratulations. I hope we see plenty of you during the course of the year. Thanks very much for your time.
You will, Graham.
Scott Morrison in Canberra. In a moment, the